In today's video, I want to talk about the movie Gladiator 2. A few weeks before Christmas, and I went to go see Gladiator 2, and I think it was actually a pretty good movie. Now, compared to the first one, I do not think it was anywhere near as good or better than the first one. The first Gladiator movie starring Russell Crowe is in my top 5 movies of all time, and it is a work of art, one of the best revenge story movies I've ever seen, and the second one does not reach that level of a quality movie. The events of Gladiator 2 take place 16 years after the first one and after the death of Maximus. Lucius, who is a little boy in the first movie, is not in Rome and he is somewhere else entirely with his wife, and we see that Rome is coming to take the land that he is at. He gets taken from his land and his wife is killed, and he is now following in the footsteps of Maximus, becoming a gladiator and fulfilling his own revenge story within this movie. I think this movie had fantastic production. I think it looked amazing, which is really something you don't get a lot of these days. I mean, everything is CGI to high heaven, but things aren't really good in its core. Now, even though the story wasn't my favorite, it was still actually one of the best stories I've seen in a movie in a long time, and it was still a solid movie. Another thing that was awesome was the acting. I think all of the actors played their roles perfectly. The person who played Lucius as a grown man was perfect for the role. Denzel Washington, as always, a phenomenal actor. In this movie, he is a person who owns gladiators and puts them in the arena, but also has his own desires that he tries to gain power and take over Rome. There's also a pair of twins that are the emperors of Rome and took over right after Commodus was killed at the end of the first one. Now, Lucius was next in line to become emperor of Rome, but he was sent away when he was a young boy. Now, I'm not quite sure when the twins took over, but it wasn't too long after that they became the new emperors of Rome, and they're a little twisted. And there's one twin in specific that was the same type of twisted that Commodus was, but just a lot more. This movie was really good. I really enjoyed it. I was very skeptical when they announced they were going to make a Gladiator 2. I didn't understand how that was going to happen. Russell Crowe, Maximus, had died in the first one, so where do you go from that? I have to say that I was genuinely surprised on how good the movie was. And I'm not really surprised because Ridley Scott is a fantastic director and he made the first one and he has made so many other good movies since then. So it is not a surprise this movie was that good. But I think like everything else these days, it played off the nostalgia of the first one. A lot of videos that I put on this YouTube channel have been based off of nostalgia. So I understand where it's coming from, but I feel like Gladiator 1 should have just been left alone. Even though I enjoyed the second movie, and I'm actually kind of happy they made it, and it's something fun and entertaining to watch, I feel like it was one of those stories that didn't need to be elaborated on and would have been fine just staying alone. But people can't help themselves, and they have to make sequels. They have to play off the nostalgia and play off the popularity of the first movie of these franchises and continue milking the cash that came before this film. So yes, even though I am a huge fan of nostalgia and I enjoy the first one so much, I really wish they would just stop with movies these days, playing off the nostalgia, and do something brand new. I felt like the death emotions were very lacking. In this film, Lucius's wife dies, and you can obviously see that he's very upset. But in the first movie, when Russell Crowe finds his wife and child hanging, the emotions that he shows gives you goosebumps. And all of the acting that he shows in that scene hits so deep, and you feel what he is feeling. In Gladiator 2, you don't feel that way. People are dying that you've seen from the first movie, and it just happens. That's it. In this movie, his mother ends up dying, and there's about a 15-second pause, and then it's over. And there's no real emotion. He goes and he tracks down the man that killed her, and that's it. I feel like the final battle needed to be more. Denzel Washington is the one that fired the arrow to kill Lucius's mother, and he goes, and it was a very big letdown of a fight. They wrestled around in the water a little bit, kicked each other around, ends up just cutting off Denzel Washington's arm and then slashes him in the chest. The end battle in Gladiator 1 is one of the best battles. Maximus is fighting Commodus, this evil emperor, and they're doing a 1-versus-1 battle in front of the entire Colosseum. And finally, it gets to the point where he kills Commodus, and you're just rooting for him that he has successfully fulfilled his vengeance. This one, the twins weren't killed by Lucius. The one twin was killed by the other twin and Denzel Washington, and then Denzel Washington stuck a pin in the crazy twin's ear and killed him. So that was a different twist of events, and I actually respected that because it wasn't a carbon copy of the first movie, but I still was left wanting something more for that final battle. I think the biggest thing I have an issue with is that Lucius is Maximus's son. There was no inclination whatsoever that Lucius was Maximus's son. And the only reason why I didn't like that is because Maximus' only goal was getting back to his wife and child. So the only way that me personally am I justifying him having this other kid that's not with his wife, that maybe Maximus had a relationship with the emperor's daughter before he was married, but then also the timeline doesn't make sense to me because I think that he must have married his wife right after he had this kid that he didn't know about, because I'm pretty sure Lucius and Maximus's son are both the same age.
Lucius, he'll be nearly 8 years old.
My son is also nearly 8.
I think this was just their way of creating a story to make a second movie, and they had to just twist and turn what the already existing story is. And I guess it was whatever, but that was my least favorite thing out of this movie. The final thing that was just kind of was at the end of the movie, Lucius goes into the Colosseum like Maximus's friend does at the end of the first movie. And he goes in and he picks up the sand and he's talking to his mother and father, and he's sitting there asking them for a sign, like to speak to him. I feel like he should have said, "I will see you two again," but not yet, which would have paid homage to the first movie where Maximus's friend is burying the statues in the sand, and he goes,
"I will see you again, but not yet."
I think that was one thing they should have done exactly the same as the first movie. Very small thing, but it would have played in very well. Of course, I always have complaints. It's what I do, and I can't help myself. And I feel like I had to get this out because I love the first movie so much. There were things that bothered me that didn't need to really have happened. But that aside, I think this movie was actually really good, and I'm actually going to give it a whopping 8. I think this was an 8 out of 10 movie, and it was still really good, even though there were some things in the storyline that I didn't care for, and there's some things for the acting, and maybe certain things within the movie that were lacking, but still, it was a really good movie, and even though I didn't want this movie to happen, I think they did it very well. Now, let's pray and hope they do not make sequels to movies that are standalone movies, because once you make a sequel, you're risking spoiling what already happened before, and it's not necessary. Let's hope that people will start gaining brain cells and making new stuff that's actually really good. Instead, these days, it's just a common theme of just milking dry what has already been established instead of making something brand new. But what are you going to do? Thank you for watching this video. Please leave down in the comments what you think if you've seen this movie. Please like and subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next one.